selection in the 4th round. And on the flip side, the real #1 pick, Jared Goff, fell to the 31st selection in the redraft. So, Shannon, do you agree with this?
Hell no. Based off what? Dak's played 5 years, won 1 playoff game. He won 2 division titles. Jared Goff has won 2 division titles, and he's taken a team to the Super Bowl. Okay, I get he's gotten traded. It's easy to say, well, he's gotten traded, he's on a new team, Carson Wentz is on a new team. But what has Dak? Now, if you want to say Patrick Mahomes should have been the first pick of his draft, nobody's going to refute that. But I need you to show me empirical evidence that says Dak Prescott has been so much better. And where are these championships to validate this argument? To say he's won 1 playoff game, which is fewer than what Jared Goff has won, that he should go over Jared Goff, and Jared Goff is going to a Super Bowl? Are we looking at just because Jared Goff is no longer with his original team? This is absurd. Now, if you want to say maybe Derrick Henry, who's a 2-time rushing champ, who's one guy who got 2,000 yards in 1 playoff game, okay. Jalen Ramsey, Joey Bosa, Tyreek Hill, I would even give you those. But I need to see something other than a bunch of stats that says Dak Prescott should have been the #1 pick in the draft. Based off what? What have the Cowboys won? They've missed the playoffs just as many times as they've made it. And Dak should be #1? This is absurd. This is laughable.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. You finally turned back into Shannon Sharpe, Pro Football Hall of Famer.
But he still should get paid.
I have lost you over the last 4 or 5 months because suddenly you have become Dak Prescott's biggest fan and defender. And you've been telling me for weeks on end on this show that he now deserves close to Patrick Mahomes' money. And I ask you, when did Dak Prescott turn into Patrick Mahomes? Well, it's when Jerry done him wrong and didn't pay him. Pay the man. And I keep saying, pay him what? Mahomes' money or close to? He's not worth it. And all of a sudden, there's this runaway train of Dak support. And, of course, ironically, I have been the biggest defender, and nobody has applauded Dak Prescott more publicly than I have over the last, going on 5 years. But, again, reality is reality, and all of a sudden he vaults to the top of this draft. And then my other question is, Shannon, when did Jared Goff turn into Josh Rosen? I mean,
yes.
let's not forget, he's a 2-time Pro Bowler, and in 2018, the season they wound up in the Super Bowl, he was graded as the 8th best quarterback in Pro Football by Pro Football Focus, and he finished 10th in QBR. So he was a top 10 quarterback. And remember, head-to-head with Dak Prescott in the playoff game out here in L.A. at the Coliseum, it came down to a fateful 3rd and 7 play coming out of the 2-minute warning from the Rams' 28-yard line. Dak had started to heat up. The score was 30-22 Rams. And Sean McVay called a bootleg, a rollout for Jared Goff. Remember what happened, Shannon? He kept the football, and he ran with it for 11 yards, and I was done. Jared Goff made that play, and he made enough plays to get them. Obviously, they got help from the referees, but he made enough plays to get them through New Orleans to New England in the Super Bowl, and he did not play well in that Super Bowl. We all know that. But if you look at his numbers from 2017 to 2019, Jared Goff, he was 6th in the NFL in completions, and he tied for 5th in touchdowns. Well, that could make him edge of a top 5 quarterback. And obviously, the Rams had some misgivings about him, struggled some last year, yet they still got to the playoffs. And yet when they had an opportunity, that organization, that executive board of theirs, it will plunge. And when they said, we could get Matthew Stafford, and I do think he's a diamond in the rough. I think he's a top 5 quarterback who's been toiling in obscurity in Detroit for all these years for a bad franchise and a bad football team. And I do think he's an upgrade over Jared Goff. And so they plunged. And I don't blame him for that, but that doesn't completely disqualify Jared Goff to the 31st pick in the first round of that draft. That is insane and just silliness, because somebody looking for a semblance of a quarterback would have taken Jared Goff before 31 in that draft.
Exactly, Skip. If you remember, I think it was 2017 when the Cowboys had the Rams down, and Jared Goff led that comeback in Dallas.
Did. No, he did.
And they just beat him out here last. So he's, if I'm not mistaken, Skip, he might be 3-0 against Dak Prescott. So I just don't get it. I get Dak has played. I think Dak has played well considering where he's drafted. He's played above where he should have been drafted.
Absolutely.
But to say he should have been the number 1 overall pick, Skip, if he had Mahomes' credentials, he's been an MVP. He's taken a team to a Super Bowl, won one, gone to another. Skip, you get no argument from me, Skip. I say, you know what? They're absolutely right. But because he's won one playoff game, he's won 2 division titles, Jared Goff has just as many division titles, more playoff victories, and he should be 31 and Dak should be drafted number 1. What evidence? Because I guess, Skip, Dak is the only one that's with his original team of the quarterbacks that were selected in that draft. I guess that's it. But there are other players, like I said, Joey Bosa, Jalen Ramsey, Derrick Henry, Tyreek Hill.
Yep.
But to say Dak, Skip, from the 4th round, based on what he has some stats, I don't know, is his stats that much better than Jared Goff's as far as yards? Passing yards, touchdowns, QBR. Are they that much better than Jared Goff that you're like, yep, Dak should have been the number 1 overall pick? I don't see it.
And Shannon, I know I keep
He still should get paid.
Yeah, I got it, but I keep beating this drum until there's going to be a hole in it, but I cannot defend that over Dak Prescott's last 17 starts, he's 6-11. Not all his fault, but some his fault. And as you know and I know, down the stretch 2 years ago, after a hot start over the last 13 games, I'm going to remind you again, you gave him 7 Fs, as in flunk, as in fail. And it was hard for me to argue against those Fs. Maybe they were Ds, but the point was he just wasn't very good. He was very disappointing to me. Yeah. And in the end, even last year, I know the stats look good, but you kept saying empty calories because they had the massive, outrageous, miraculous comeback against the Falcons at home. They were down 29-10 at halftime, and they came back and stole that game. And without that one, he would have started out 1, and if you'd given the Giants, you know, it could have been 1-4 because he was trailing for a while against the Giants. So, again, he did not get off to the greatest start last year either. So, again, that's the guy you say would have been a slam dunk number 1 overall? No.
Yeah, I mean, Skip, there have been some guys. I mean, you look at Michael Thomas, Zeke, and obviously Jalen Ramsey, Joey Bosa was in that same draft.
Yeah.
But I just don't get, Skip, how you gonna say a guy that's won 2 division titles in 1 playoff game should go from the 4th round? Should he have been a 1st rounder? Yes. Should he been a number 1 overall pick given what he's done? I don't think so, Skip. I think that is a huge leap, a monumental leap.
Which is why, in the end, he's not going to get a long-term deal holding on and holding out for the kind of money he wants, which is close to Mahomes' money.
Unfortunately, I know, Shannon, you're trying to help the guy get his money, but when you put it that way, it's a good point, Skip. We got to go back to LeBron here.
No, just because you're not...
What are you saying,
Just
Shannon?
because you're not the number 1 overall pick, just because you're not the number 1 overall pick, that doesn't mean you don't deserve to get paid. He needs $41 million, Skip, and we'll call it a day.
Oh.
$41 million.
You pay him.
Call it a day. You heard it from Shannon. Does LeBron have a glaring hole in his legacy, guys? That is next.